Hi, I'm Mary McNamara with the Los Angeles Times. Welcome to our Emmy Contenders chat series. Today, I'm thrilled to have Richard Madden here to talk about The Bodyguard, which was a huge hit in the UK and a huge hit in the United States, and just took everybody by surprise and by storm. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So The Bodyguard was one of those shows that we started hearing about here before it was available here. Were you, I mean, it sort of came out of nowhere, or at least it felt like that from our standpoint. Were you surprised at how just like the overwhelming response to it?
I'm still surprised and overwhelmed by it. Yeah, I mean, we kind of shot this BBC show in the UK initially and think, okay, this is hopefully going to do well and people will like it. And then it kind of ran away with itself, which was lovely, and then came to America and people watched it here too, so I'm kind of still catching up with the fact that so many people have tuned in, which is brilliant.
It was really, I mean, it was really through social media. People were tweeting about it from the UK and everybody was like, can't wait for it. In the series, you play a special forces, were you special forces soldier who has PTSD,
yeah.
And you are then enlisted to become the bodyguard of, I can't remember, is she the Prime Minister?
Home Secretary.
The Home Secretary, exactly. And obviously there are all sorts of political machination and everything. But I have to ask, like, coming from Game of Thrones, was the PTSD thing easy? I mean, you came from...
I mean, I think I had my own kind of issues after Thrones that killed me off, which was quite a traumatic experience. But yeah, that was quite a long time ago. So it was kind of, I came to this with something different, and that's what I loved about it, this PTSD element that I'd not really seen in television or film, the way that Jed had written it and the way we wanted to portray it. So it was good to kind of understand and try and work out how to do that properly.
And did you talk to soldiers about their experience?
Well, this is the problem with PTSD, is people really don't want to talk about it. But I did speak to some friends of mine who've been in the army, and they really don't like talking about a lot of things. But I managed to speak to some people, and a lot of kind of ex-forces men who have experience and stories that I could tune into.
So when you agreed, one of the great things about The Bodyguard is it has like at least two huge twists that you do not see coming, at least two. Did you know when you signed on that those were coming? What did you sign up for?
I knew the first 3 episodes what was happening. I didn't know what was going to happen in episode 6, and that was something I actually tried to push as much as I could of pushing off as long as I could until I got episode 6, so that I didn't preempt anything that I was doing in episodes 4 and 5 that were leading up to these twists that were coming. So I kind of enjoyed not knowing until I had to, and then kind of wrestling how to pull my character around into being on track.
And so did you know how it was going to end? Not to spoil it in any way.
No.
So when did you find out? Did you find out
like when we were filming
really?
episodes 4 and 5? I was like, okay, that's what's happening, right? Okay.
That's great. As we were discussing a little bit earlier, right now, a lot of people are talking about these remarks that you made about filming nude scenes. You filmed some semi-nude scenes in The Bodyguard, and the pressure that male actors feel. I mean, we've heard a lot about, how women feel pressure to lose weight or to look a certain way, and you were saying that the same was true for men. Is that,
Yeah. Absolutely, the same is true for men a lot of the time. I think it's part of this business, sadly, that's something that's going to be there. And usually for myself, I like to do it so that when I'm on set, when I'm filming a scene, that I don't have to be as self-conscious about my body. But yeah, I'm aware of the pressure that's put on actors and actresses all the time to kind of trim up and bulk up or slim down. I think it's part of the job, and sometimes it's really relevant. If I'm playing a soldier who's a bodyguard, then my body needs to be a certain way, and I understand that. And then other times it's not as relevant, but it's just what the norm is that we're used to seeing in magazines and television. And so that's something that I don't want to feed into, but you find yourself doing, and that's where I've kind of realised lately I want to just check myself on that, so I'm not kind of feeding into unrealistic body images that I then have to kind of adhere to.
And do you think, I mean, one of the things about now in the UK, you've had looser standards or less standards. In the United States, nudity on television is fairly new, and it comes from cable, it comes from the streamers. Do you feel as an actor, is that something that you are being asked to do more of, or is it like the same that it was when you began?
I think it's quite often you find yourself reading scripts that have got. I mean, I think nearly every script I read has some sort of nudity in it from the leading male or female characters, and sometimes it's really relevant. You know, you talk to someone very differently when you're naked lying in bed than you do if you're fully clothed sitting in a cafe. So there's times when it can be necessary because there's a certain intimacy that comes through the dialogue from being naked with someone. And then there's other scenes where, you know, it's just thrown in that a character takes his shirt off and has a shower, and you kind of go, oh, this is not relevant. This is just to take a character's shirt off and they have a shower. And you know, there's lots of other ways you can show a person getting ready in the morning. Why don't we watch them boiling the kettle and making a coffee or something? It's because they throw that in because, you know, sex and nudity are things that kind of titillate people, I think. So I always try and make sure that when it's in a script I'm doing, that it's got a relevance to it, it's got a point, rather than just a kind of gratuitous show of nudity.
It's interesting because we don't think about, I mean, we think about it with women, the objectification of women, but now we're seeing some of that with the male characters too, which is certainly, I mean, your presence in The Bodyguard, there was a lot of swooning. I mean, there was a lot of, like, that was kind of the fan-based reaction. But did you, in The Bodyguard, there is also a lot of technical, you know, it's like over here it would be like SWAT team kind of, you know, setups and things with gadgets. Were those things that you learned about? Did you like go follow, you know, anybody?
Yeah, we had specialists on set that would teach us about certain things. I had to learn how to do kind of, it was crazy, like the crab walking when you've got a gun, which feels very strange because you're just kind of on a level. Feels strange, looks great on camera. And then we had some real gadgets like listening devices to doors and stuff like that you're like, this is quite remarkable how much it actually works through like 2 doors. You're like, this is scary.
So you were using real actual things.
Some of those
That's
stuff.
funny. Yeah, because the listening devices figure pretty heavily in that. And did you, I mean, as somebody who is fairly famous, I'm sure you've had security at times. I'm sure when you went to Comic-Con with Game of Thrones, you probably had a lot of security. Did that inform your personal experience of security? Did that inform?
It taught me a lot. I mean, that was one of the kind of challenges of doing Bodyguard, was these kind of very talented, brave security personnel don't show anything, and that's what I find a lot of the time when I'm working with security, they don't. And that was one of the things with Bodyguard, was how do I play a complex character and show it without compromising what he does for a living, which is show nothing.
And how did, I mean, it is kind of the very, like the close shots on your face, and they're very, you know, how did you do that? Did you,
well,
what were you thinking about? Or?
This was one of the gifts of how we shot it. We'd shoot the scenes from all the different angles, and then at the end we'd usually punch in with the camera right in my face, and I'd be able to play the scene once with everything I wasn't playing during the scene, basically play the way I see things in my head rather than how everyone else sees it. So that was a gift for me to kind of really play everything, and then the editor and director could piece together what bits they show. And I think you often see that. You have these scenes and then we punch in on David's face really close and you get to read everything that's going on and pull back to a kind of statue. It was a kind of really interesting way of playing things, and I had to kind of trust in the director and editor that they were going to pull out these things so I didn't just become a statue for the duration. But
it is a very physical, it's not just the face, it's the stature and the way you're holding your shoulders and all of that. Did you look at how bodyguards, you know, they do like manage to menace by just standing there. And
absolutely.
It isn't just the earpiece.
Yeah, you know, there's a physical presence thing you need to have, and that was also aided. I mean, I cursed it at the time, but now I look back and think it was great, as I wore a full Kevlar vest.
Oh, really?
A bulletproof vest, which was, you're strapped in tight and it kind of acts as like a back brace, so you do end up kind of being in this bodyguard posture, which actually works really well for the character and gives you that kind of stature and size that helps.
So when you're doing those scenes, you're wearing actual equipment. I always wonder about that because it's so heavy.
I mean, it's so heavy.
It changes how you stand and walk and all of that stuff.
It's really
so I guess
heavy.
that makes sense that you would actually use it. So asking that, I mean, you were used to wearing armor in Game of Thrones. I mean, did that help at all? Did that, you know, and you also had certain menacing, you know, stature or a formidable presence?
I think with Bodyguard it was good because it was actually much lighter than the Game of Thrones stuff. Game of Thrones stuff kind of ended up a bit of a nightmare some days. You see all these men on set looking brave, and then when they call cut, everyone kind of collapses and throws a cloak off and drops their sword. You know, everyone's not as brave all the time when the cameras go off. But again, you know, like with Bodyguard, like with Game of Thrones, these things help the way you walk, your posture, your stature, they all kind of feed into the character. So it ends up being a really useful thing.
And I mean, going from, obviously there was a time, there was a span, what was it, 2 years between Game of Thrones and The Bodyguard when you left?
A bit
Was
more.
it longer?
I think a bit more. I think
longer?
more like 4.
Yeah.
Probably about
Wow.
4 and a half, I think.
It
Maybe
seems like yesterday to us. The Red Wedding happened. But to go from a show that was a very talked about show and then you do Bodyguard and again, you're like in the middle of the maelstrom. I mean, are you the talisman? Are you?
I don't know about that. I think just
Are you
pure
actor
luck.
zero that like sort of makes sure that everything like blows up?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I will not take any credit for that. I think there's writers that take the credit for that. I've just been lucky enough to be cast in these things that have had very clever writing.
And are you following, do you watch Game of Thrones?
I cannot wait for Sunday night.
No. You haven't seen it?
Nope.
You haven't?
Don't know a thing about it.
You didn't get to go to the premiere?
No.
Yeah, okay. You don't know who wins?
Nope.
You won't tell us who wins? Okay, so we have some questions from some other folks, so let's
Sure.
get to those so I don't forget. Annette on Twitter asks, is there a certain dream role you would totally want to play one day?
There is a dream role that I've always wanted to play since I was a child. Is Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman. I'd love to
Really?
play that on stage when I'm hopefully in my 60s, if I'm still going by then. It's just something I've always kind of really loved and wanted to do.
You said you've talked about one of the things about being in The Bodyguard that was different for you is you play a father, whereas in the past you've played mostly sons or brothers or whatever. How did you inform yourself with that? Are you a father?
No.
No. Okay.
It's interesting
Sorry,
you're saying
I
that,
didn't
and
know
I
that.
just spoke about Willie Loman, which is
Right.
the ultimate father. I'd not pieced the two
Exactly.
together actually, because it always seemed so far from me playing fathers until I kind of started doing it, and it does inform kind of everything differently. I think there's an idea of your own mortality that changes when you're a father, as far as I've come to understand without being one, and so that kind of really filters into the characters, particularly in Bodyguard, when you're risking your life every day for someone, literally your life, but you've got 2 children. I think it changes your own mentality.
Right, you have a responsibility to
Yeah.
stay alive. But I also think that in Bodyguard it helps ground that character because there's the trouble in the marriage, but he definitely wants the marriage to succeed and he
Yeah.
wants to be back in his children's lives.
And wants to be a good father to his son, and that's part of him struggling with his PTSD and his identity is not knowing how to raise his son properly and knowing that he's failing at that as well, and that feeds into kind of it's a self-perpetuating cycle of kind of self-destruction and hatred, I think, that comes into it.
When you were thinking about or looking at the script for The Bodyguard, I mean, one of the things that impressed me was that we do see a lot of super spies. We see Jack Bauer or people who are able to do some of the things that your character does, but we don't see the repercussions as clearly. Was that like one of the reasons you?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I loved, and thank God for Thomas Vincent and Jed Mercurio giving me the space as the character to play those moments when he's at home alone by himself. These moments you don't get to see as much, or see him with a friend. I think these kind of, your Jack Bauers and these kind of spy or military characters, you're often seen in very isolated situations because their jobs are very isolating. So when you get to see him either completely isolated and be himself at home, or when he's with his children or a friend, you get to see a different element that maybe we don't get to see as much with other kind of spy characters or security characters, that kind of thing. And I really appreciated that time because it gave moments when you have to have such a mask all the time, and then you had these moments where you can see him drop his mask and be himself, and it was interesting to kind of juxtapose those two things.
Is it hard to play a character who's in a sense playing a character?
Yeah, it's the conception. He's a character playing a character, but I think that's part of him. It's just so fascinating. He's constantly pushing this kind of trauma from his past. He's pushing it down, and it keeps bursting out in different places while he's still trying to live live in the moment, dealing with kind of mirroring where he was before. So yeah, it becomes very confusing, and I think that was useful for me playing the character because he's in a very confused place.
It's interesting. Brienne of Tarth on Twitter.
Brienne of
I
Tarth.
didn't know Brienne of Tarth was on Twitter.
She is.
Asks, how did you prepare to play a war veteran with PTSD in Bodyguard?
I spoke to a lot of people who did the job. That's what was quite fascinating. With Jed Mercury and his other show, Line of Duty, he had a lot of military advisors that were in there. So I managed to kind of speak to a lot of them and found it very interesting because, you know, there was a lot of kind of people saying it was very fictionalized, this relationship with the Home Secretary, and actually from them, without naming any names, they would tell me that actually you do end up very close to these people, and sometimes that line does get muddied and you end up in different relationships. So that was quite interesting to learn that it wasn't completely fictionalized where we were going with the story, that it was based on, you know, these protection officers who you spend more time with than your husband or wives or kids or friends. You know, naturally I think sometimes, you know, the line gets crossed.
Well, not only more time, but also because of that kind of, you know, fly on the wall, they see them in, you know, a wider variety of circumstances because your character is present in a lot of, you know, secret meetings
Absolutely.
or, you know, secret situations. Let's see, one last question. Mrs. Mom asks, oh, well, this is about Rocketman.
Sure.
How much singing did you practice for Rocketman?
I practiced a lot more than I do in the film because I don't have the best singing voice. But yeah, I have a bit of singing and a bit of dancing I do with the wonderful Taryn Edgerton, which is again just totally different from Bodyguard, jumping into doing a bit of singing and dancing. But I think my first vocal session was at Abbey Road Studios in London, where the Beatles recorded a lot of stuff. So kind of walked in and was completely intimidated and also kind of thrilled, being like, okay, if anywhere's going to make me sound good, this is going to be the place.
Can we talk a little bit about Rocketman, which is
Absolutely.
a biopic about Elton John, and you play his manager and
First
sometimes
boyfriend. It was his first boyfriend.
First boyfriend.
Boyfriend for about 5 years, who then became his manager for many, many more years after their relationship ended. And it's quite interesting to go from something like Bodyguard into Rocketman, where I'm singing and dancing, and also playing a bit of a villain in essence, which again was a different thing for me that I've not usually done. I've played a lot of princes and kings and good guys that have bad things happen to them. And it was nice to kind of be a bad guy that does bad things as well.
How did you access that? Did you like?
It wasn't very hard.
All those things you've been wanting to do.
I did quite a lot of research on the character because he's a real man and he's still alive, and spoke to a lot of people. He again is a very elusive character to work out because he was always in the background. So I managed to speak to a lot of people that knew him and a lot of stories about him from different times. And luckily, there's not a lot you can find out about him. So I was able to pick from these stories what elements we wanted to make up that would serve our story the best. And so I managed to do a bit of that with Dexter Fletcher. We did it together.
I can't wait to see it. Looks fabulous from the trailers. So there's been a lot of conversation about whether there's going to be a second season of Bodyguard. There is going to be a second season, but we don't know when. Is that where we are?
We very much hope so. Yeah, me and Jed met after season 1 had aired, and it ran away with itself because we'd not intended to make a second one. But then, you know, the character's so fascinating and the storyline was so well taken by people that we decided to let's talk about doing it again. And one thing we agreed on was to try and not do the mold that a lot of shows tend to do, which is second season's filming before season 1's even finished. And I think without spoiling the show for people that haven't watched it, the nature of what happens to the character, you need a break. He needs a break before he dives into the next bit of his life, the next chapter. And I think, you know, if we were to film straight away what was happening with David Budd, I think he'd just probably be in a lot of therapy and maybe be on a beach somewhere and, you know, not doing much after, you know, a kind of pretty aggressive few months he had. So me and Jed wanted to kind of create something that's going to be different and do it justice to season 1.
Mm-hmm. So will you be working on writing the series, or
no, I'll let that genius man do it.
Just going to be talking about like the story,
the
focus,
story, and just be part of it and see what elements of him we want to bring out and talk to. I mean, Jed is the man; he's the genius. So I just speak his words.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's one of the things that is different, or although it's changing a little bit, is that in the UK, there is more of a tradition of shows taking that kind of break. Like, it's a year and over here we're still getting used to that. So you'll probably get a lot of Americans going, hurry.
Hurry. And we
to
want to hurry, but I'd rather we kind of wait and really come up with something smart that's going to be as exciting as season 1 rather than kind of reproducing what we've done. Let's find out something new and exciting like it did.
Is there anything else that you're working on right now?
Yeah, I'm doing Sam Mendes' new film, 1917, which is set during World War I. I think that's about as much as I can say without getting in trouble. But I'm really excited. It's a really amazing cast of actors, and Sam Mendes is obviously phenomenal, so I'm just very excited to be working on that.
And are you a villain or a good guy?
You'll have to wait and see.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
we
for having
really
me.
appreciate it, and I have to say, I am very much looking forward to a second season of The Bodyguard, so I hope that does actually happen. Thank you for joining us. If you want to see some more of these fabulous Emmy contender chats, please come to latimes.com.